The year was 1525, and the winds of fate howled across the fractured lands of Europe. Beneath the pale dawn, the Italian peninsula lay like a jewel caught between the claws of titans, great empires hungry for power, glory, and dominion. It was a time when kings wove alliances as deftly as they wielded swords, and the clangor of war was never far from the ears of men. In the north, the mighty Habsburg Emperor Charles V stood tall, his empire stretching from the sun-drenched plains of Spain to the snow-capped peaks of Austria. His eyes burned with the cold fire of ambition, for the crown of Italy was a prize he coveted fiercely. Across the mountains and rivers, his adversary, the youthful and proud King Francis I of France, was no less determined. His banners, adorned with golden fleurs-de-lis, fluttered boldly in the breeze, rallying thousands who dreamed of glory and conquest. For years, these two great houses had clashed across the lands, a titanic struggle not only of armies but of ideals, pride, and destiny. Italy's fertile fields and ancient cities became a battleground for this relentless contest. The city of Pavia, perched strategically on the banks of the Ticino River, became the focal point, a jewel whose fate could tip the balance of power. Amidst whispered councils and echoing war drums, generals gathered their forces. The French boasted a formidable cavalry, their heavy artillery casting long shadows across the battlefield. But the Habsburgs answered with something more disciplined, more deadly. The pike, a spear that could rend armor and shatter charges, wielded by soldiers whose resolve was as steel-hard as their weapons. The air hung heavy with tension, as if the very earth awaited the coming storm. Farmers abandoned their fields, townsfolk barred their doors. In the distance, the first banners rose, and the march to war began. The stage was set, and the world would soon witness a battle that would echo through the ages, a clash of pikes and blood, steel and fire. The sun rose higher over the rolling hills of Lombardy, casting long shadows upon the armies that now faced each other across the fields near Pavia. Thousands of men, foot soldiers, cavalry, and artillery, marshaled under banners that spoke of pride, honor, and unyielding ambition. The ground beneath them, once fertile and quiet, trembled under the weight of steel and determination. Charles V's forces were a mosaic of the empire's vast reach. Spanish tercios, battle-hardened infantry wielding the deadly pike and musket, German lanzknechts, fierce mercenaries adorned in slashed sleeves and colorful feathers, and Italian allies whose loyalty was bought with gold and promises. Their formation was a living wall of spears and discipline, a testament to centuries of military tradition. Opposing them stood the French army, a tempest of chivalry and might. Knights clad in shining plate armor prepared their steeds, their lances gleaming in the sunlight. Artillery crews loaded heavy cannons, their roars soon to shake the earth. The French strategy relied heavily on the power of their cavalry and the devastating effect of their artillery to break enemy lines. But beneath the pomp and pride, tension simmered. The French commanders underestimated the deadly efficiency of the Habsburg pike formations, dismissing them as outdated against the charging cavalry. Yet history had taught the Habsburgs well. The long pikes could halt a charge, their deadly tips piercing through armor and flesh alike. As the armies positioned themselves, scouts rode swiftly between the lines, carrying messages of hope and dread. The commanders studied the terrain, rolling fields interrupted by patches of woods and the winding Ticino River, all poised to become the stage of a brutal confrontation. The men knew that once the sun dipped below the horizon, the clash would be merciless and absolute. Blood would stain the soil, and legends would be forged in fire. The morning mist clung to the fields like a shroud as dawn broke over Pavia. Soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, their breath visible in the crisp air, eyes sharp and minds steeled for the carnage to come. The clash was no longer a distant rumor, but an impending tempest, a reckoning drawn in steel and shadow. The Habsburg pike formations, rows upon rows of disciplined men, bristled like a forest of deadly spears. Each soldier was a cog in a machine forged by endless drills and unyielding discipline. Their resolve was as unbreakable as the iron tips they held, poised to shatter the thunder of French cavalry charges. Across the field, the French knights tightened their grip on reins, their polished armor gleaming with fatal resolve. The war cries rose like thunder, and the first volleys of artillery shook the air, sending plumes of earth skyward. The battle was unleashed. French cavalry surged forward, a tide of horse and steel crashing into the Habsburg lines. But the pikes stood firm, their deadly points thrusting upward like a bristling wall. Horses reared and fell. Men cried out as lances shattered against the unyielding spear forest. The ground beneath was churned to mud, slick with blood and sweat. Amid the chaos, commanders shouted orders, their voices barely audible over the roar. The battle unfolded in brutal waves, charges met by pike stabs, sword clashes ringing out, muskets firing in deadly salvos. The air was thick with smoke and the metallic scent of blood. As hours dragged on, the tide shifted. The French cavalry, once proud and thunderous, began to falter against the relentless pikes. Habsburg musketeers seized their chance, raining fire upon the disorganized knights. The field became a tableau of horror and heroism alike, where every man fought not just for victory, but for survival. As the sun climbed higher, the Battle of Pavia erupted into a maelstrom of steel, blood, and unyielding will. The once orderly ranks dissolved into chaos, the clash of pikes and swords echoing like thunder across the fields. The earth itself seemed to tremble beneath the fury of men locked in mortal combat. French knights, despite their initial confidence, found themselves ensnared by the deadly reach of the Habsburg pikes. The tight formations of the tercios moved with terrifying precision, pushing forward inch by inch, spear tips glinting with lethal intent. Horses fell under the relentless assault, their riders swallowed by the swirling tide of infantry. The air was thick with smoke from muskets and cannon fire, mingling with the cries of the wounded and dying. Amid the smoke and steel, officers shouted commands, rallying their men to hold the line or press the attack. Yet discipline began to fray. Fear and exhaustion gnawed at even the bravest hearts. French artillery sought to break the Habsburg lines, but the pikes held steadfast, their spearheads an impenetrable barrier. The battlefield was a chaotic tapestry of valor and despair, soldiers fighting hand to hand, bodies sprawled across the blood-soaked earth. In the distance, the city of Pavia watched silently, its walls a stark reminder of the prize for which so many men bled. The battle's outcome hung in the balance, each moment heavy with the possibility of triumph or ruin. As the battle raged into its relentless crescendo, the tide began to turn against the French forces. The valiant charge of the knights and the thunder of artillery failed to break the iron discipline of the Habsburg pike formations. The French ranks began to fracture under the crushing weight of disciplined infantry and deadly musket fire. Amidst the chaos, King Francis I himself found his position increasingly precarious. The French command faltered as communication broke down, and confusion spread through the ranks like wildfire. In the swirling melee, French nobles fell one after another, either slain or captured, their banners tumbling into the bloodied mud. In a moment that would echo through history, King Francis I was wounded and taken prisoner. The proud monarch, once the symbol of French ambition, was now a captive of his enemies, a living trophy of the Habsburg victory. His capture sent shockwaves through both camps, breaking the spirit of the French soldiers and igniting fierce determination among the Habsburg ranks. The battlefield, once a chaotic storm, began to quiet as the French forces disintegrated. What remained were scattered bands of survivors, fleeing beneath the shadow of defeat. The Habsburgs stood victorious, their pikes and muskets having carved a brutal path through the once mighty French army. The Battle of Pavia was over, but its consequences would ripple through Europe for decades to come. The Battle of Pavia was not merely a clash of armies. It was a turning point in the art of war, a brutal testament to the evolution of military tactics and technology. The battlefield echoed with the harsh symphony of steel and gunpowder, heralding a new era where the ancient charge of cavalry met the relentless discipline of infantry wielding pikes and muskets. For centuries, mounted knights had dominated the fields of Europe, their thunderous charges breaking enemy lines and sowing terror. Yet, at Pavia, the Habsburg tercios demonstrated a deadly innovation. Formations of pikemen standing shoulder to shoulder, bristling with long spears that could halt a cavalry charge in its tracks. Behind these spear walls, musketeers delivered volleys of gunfire, their barrels smoking and thunder rolling with each discharge. The combination of pike and musket created a deadly synergy. Cavalry charges were shattered against the steel forest, while musket fire tore through disorganized ranks. This battle was a harbinger of change, signaling the decline of the medieval knight and the rise of modern infantry tactics. Armies would never again rely solely on the might of horses and swords. Instead, discipline, formation, and firepower became the pillars of victory. Generals and soldiers alike studied the outcome of Pavia, learning lessons carved in blood and sacrifice. The battlefield became a classroom for future conflicts, shaping the strategies that would dominate Europe's wars for centuries to come. The echoes of the Battle of Pavia resonated far beyond the blood-soaked fields. Italy, a mosaic of city-states, kingdoms, and duchies, now stood under the watchful gaze of the Habsburg Empire, its delicate balance shattered. The victory had shifted the scales of power, but it also sowed the seeds of future intrigue and conflict. With King Francis I imprisoned, the French crown found itself vulnerable. Rival factions within France debated the path forward. Some urged negotiation and ransom, others clamored for renewed warfare to reclaim lost honor. The French people, battered and bruised by defeat, faced an uncertain future. In Italy, the once contested territories fell under Habsburg influence, yet resistance simmered beneath the surface. Cities that had once pledged allegiance to France now grappled with the reality of foreign rule. Diplomats moved like shadows through the courts, weaving webs of alliances and betrayals. The battle had also sent a message to the rest of Europe. The age of cavalry dominance was waning, replaced by the disciplined infantry and firearms. Monarchs began to rethink their armies, investing in new tactics and weaponry, anticipating the wars that loomed on the horizon. As the sun set over Italy's fractured landscape, the promise of peace remained fragile. The war for supremacy was far from over, and the Battle of Pavia was but one chapter in the relentless saga of power, ambition, and blood. Beyond the grand strategies and shifting alliances, the Battle of Pavia was a crucible of human suffering and heroism. Thousands of soldiers, from seasoned veterans to terrified recruits, faced the harrowing chaos of combat, each carrying dreams, fears, and the weight of duty. Among the pike formations, men moved as one, brothers in arms united by rigorous training and unyielding resolve. They faced the thunderous charge of French knights with stoic courage, their long spears a forest of defiance. For every triumphant thrust, there were cries of pain and sacrifice, as comrades fell beside them in the brutal melee. The French cavalry, once the pride of chivalry, found themselves engulfed in relentless musket fire and the impassable wall of pikes, tales spread of knights who fought to their last breath, wielding sword and lance against overwhelming odds. Some charged valiantly, others were cut down before reaching their foes, their banners sinking into the bloodied mud. Civilians near the battlefields bore their own burdens, villages plundered, homes razed, and families torn apart. The war's reach extended beyond soldiers, casting a shadow over the lives of countless innocents caught in the storm. Yet amid despair, stories of compassion and bravery emerged. Medics tending wounded under fire, soldiers sharing scarce water with enemies, and whispers of valor that transcended allegiance. The Battle of Pavia was not only a clash of empires, but a testament to the complexities of humanity in war. The Battle of Pavia echoed across centuries, its ripples shaping the fate of nations and the evolution of warfare. The Habsburg victory marked a watershed moment, heralding the dawn of a new military age dominated by disciplined infantry and firearms. King Francis I's captivity became a symbol of shattered dreams and altered ambitions. His ransom and release years later would reshape alliances, but the scars of defeat lingered deeply within the French soul. The battle reshaped the Italian peninsula's political landscape, cementing Habsburg influence and setting the stage for future conflicts. Military tacticians studied the clash tirelessly. The deadly efficiency of the pike and musket formations influenced armies across Europe, altering recruitment, training, and battlefield doctrine. The age of chivalry was fading. The future belonged to strategy, discipline, and technology. Beyond the battlefield, the battle became legend, chronicled in letters, songs, and histories that wove fact with myth. Its lessons endured, a reminder of ambition's price and the fragile nature of power. In the grand tapestry of history, the Battle of Pavia stands as a testament to human courage, the relentless march of change, and the bloodied path toward modernity. The fall of King Francis I at Pavia was a momentous event that reverberated far beyond the battlefield. Wounded and humbled, the French monarch was taken captive, a prize whose fate would shape the future of France and Europe. Held first in Pavia, then transferred to various Habsburg strongholds, Francis endured the harsh realities of captivity with a blend of dignity and defiance. His imprisonment was not merely a personal trial, but a political tool wielded by Emperor Charles V to assert dominance and extract concessions. Back in France, the king's absence unleashed turmoil. Rival nobles vied for power, and factions debated how to respond, whether to negotiate peace or prepare for renewed war. The country's morale wavered, its future uncertain. Negotiations for Francis's ransom dragged on for years, involving vast sums and intricate diplomacy. His eventual release came at a heavy price, with territorial and political compromises that reshaped France's position in European affairs. The Prisoner King saga became a legend in its own right, a tale of captivity and resilience that underscored the personal costs of empire and ambition. Decades passed, yet the shadow of the Battle of Pavia lingered in the minds and hearts of generations. The fields where men fought and died became hallowed ground, whispered about in tales that blended history with legend. The clash of pikes and the roar of muskets echoed not just in memory, but in the very fabric of Europe's evolving identity. Italy remained a contested land, its cities and people caught in the tides of empire and rebellion. The Habsburgs' triumph at Pavia was a decisive chapter, but the struggle for control and influence continued in ever-shifting forms. The battle's lessons shaped the wars that followed, informing strategies and tactics that endured for centuries. Artists, poets, and historians immortalized Pavia's story, capturing the valor and tragedy of that brutal day. The fight between France and the Habsburg Empire transcended mere conflict, becoming a symbol of ambition's heights and the devastating costs of power. In classrooms and war colleges, the battle's tactics were studied. In hearts and minds, its stories inspired. The Battle of Pavia stands as a testament to the relentless march of history, where courage, innovation, and fate collide in the crucible of war.